Today, we're joined by author Teri M. Brown, who literally pedaled her way across America on a tandem bike to discover life's most important lessons. Teri's new book, 10 Little Rules for a Double-Butted Adventure, chronicles her incredible cross-country journey and the wisdom she gained along the way. Let's welcome Teri to the show. This program is part of the Scene Projects podcast network. Scene Project features interviews with independent musicians, comedians, and artists from across the Midwest. Become part of our community and support local art wherever you are. Welcome into another exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is Teri M. Brown. Welcome to the show, Teri.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Oh, this is fantastic. We heard about the book in the intro there. We're going to get into all of that, but I'd love to hear a little bit of your backstory before we get into all that. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I am an author. I'm also a podcast host. I'm a public speaker, but I didn't start there. I went through my whole life without doing any of those things. I was essentially a mom, which I absolutely loved that job. But I also lived in an emotionally abusive relationship for 14 years. And when I got out of that is when I started writing. But I was still a really not healed person, right? And I needed to do or become something and to believe in myself again. I met Bruce, who became my husband. He had always wanted to ride across the United States on a bicycle. We decided to do it together and on a tandem. And when I finished that ride, I realized I could do anything. It was a matter of what, and that's when I became an author.
Oh. So we have Bruce to blame for the double-butted adventure.
Well, we say blame, and I am so grateful that I had this opportunity to do something so outside of my comfort zone. When I met Bruce, I hadn't been on a bicycle in 40 years. So when I say that this was outside my comfort zone, I mean way outside, but I needed something big and bold to prove to me that I still had value and worth and that I was a capable person. I thought I needed to prove it to everyone else. Turns out it was me that needed the convincing. But once I went on that ride and realized it, my life completely opened up. And since then, I've now written 5 books. I have a podcast. I'm now co-hosting a second podcast. I'm starting what I'm calling a bite-sized podcast sometime in the next few weeks. And I've started public speaking. So my life has really opened up.
And I think we forget that that is really what new experiences and travel, like that's what it's really about, is finding out about yourself. Yes, it's about seeing these beautiful places around us, but it's truly about discovering who you are inside and how that can empower us. And I think that's a great thing that you touched on right at the top of the show there. So what was the route that you guys took? I'm interested to have you share a little bit about the journey itself.
All right. So we started in Astoria, Oregon, right on the coast. We actually dipped our rear tire into the Pacific Ocean because that's, I guess, something that people do when they ride across the United States. And then we crossed over the Rockies in a place called Lolo Pass, which is in Idaho, and then it goes into Montana. And once we hit Montana, we headed north, got on Route 2 and took Route 2 almost the whole way across the United States till we got to Michigan. We did UP Michigan, so up and around Michigan, then kind of under Lake Erie, down into Pittsburgh. From Pittsburgh, we went to DC.
Absolutely beautiful country. So I have been to Astoria. I have been through Lolo Pass. I have been across.
Isn't that a beautiful place?
Oh, just incredible. I've also done the Snake River Valley, which takes you down into like Clarkston or Lewiston and Clarksville. And that, again, just absolutely beautiful country. You went through where my family actually has in northern Wisconsin. If you went through the UP, did you cut through Wisconsin, like Manitowoc
Yes.
Waters, Minocqua
Yes.
area?
Yeah.
I know that area very well, and just absolutely beautiful parts of the country. The worst part is probably coming across North Dakota, but even there in the summer is absolutely gorgeous
In the
too.
summer, it's beautiful. The worst part actually was eastern Montana,
Very
only
similar
because,
to North Dakota in that
well, it just never stops.
it just goes
It's like,
forever.
how much longer are we going to be here? And there's not, especially as far north as we were in eastern Montana. And we went during COVID. So keep that in mind. There were a lot of small towns that just weren't anymore. So we were going through a lot of what I would consider barren wasteland. And it was really pretty for maybe days 1, 2, potentially 3. But by day 27, you're kind of tired of it all and you want it to be done. So when we got to the sign that said, essentially leaving Montana, I was just, I could have done handstands and cheerleading and everything else. Not because Montana's not beautiful, but on a bicycle, when you're averaging 40 miles a day, it takes forever to get across Montana.
Yeah, a map
Yeah.
doesn't do it justice
No,
for
it
how
does
large
not.
it is. And how many miles are you doing a day on the bike?
Approximately 42 was the average. Some days we went as many as 90. Other days we didn't make it more than 12. It just depended a lot on
Right.
terrain, weather, how
Especially
were
going
we
through the
feeling.
mountains.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And
I
some
took the
mornings you'd wake up and you'd realize I had a horrible night's sleep. Everything in my body hurts. I'm not going to be able to go 40 miles today. Like, it's going to be lucky if I can get on the bicycle at all. And so you just had to. And then there were times, like there was one time in Montana where we had to go 70 miles because there was nothing between where we had stayed and where we were going. You had
right.
no choice. 70, that's
Right.
what you had to do. And so you just kind of, yeah, everything was very dependent. And that was hard for me because I'm a planner. I like things to be neat and orderly, and this trip was not neat or orderly.
No, because once you get out there and get going, anything can happen,
Right.
right?
Right.
Weather is obviously going to impact your travel. Blisters or just soreness in general are going to
Flat
impact that.
tires,
Flat
uh,
tires, right?
the
Any
wind the
mechanical
wind blowing
failures.
against you instead of, behind you like it's supposed to. Um, Heat, mosquitoes, yeah, you name it. Just even things like there was one day where we were riding angry. I had said something that made him mad, and so he was angry, which meant that I was angry. And you don't ride well on days like that. So there's all of those things that happen that affect how you ride.
Right, and on a tandem bicycle, you have to keep pace with
Yes.
each other, and if
Yeah.
you're kind of fighting one another, and
It's
yeah,
bad. Yeah.
it can cause some problems, I'm sure. Uh,
Absolutely.
how awesome! And then you wrote a book about the whole thing.
I did. So I actually kept a blog the whole way across. So if you want to know nitty-gritty details, the temperature of the day and how many miles we rode and whether I cried, you can go to the blog, and the blog is on my website. But the book that I wrote, as I was looking over the blog when we got home, I realized, oh wow, I learned this, and oh, look at what I learned here. And it became very apparent that I had learned some really valuable life lessons. And so I compiled those life lessons into this book.
Just incredible. And how long did it take you to traverse the whole route?
So we rode 72 days, but we were out there for 3.5 months.
Wow. Just
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
And it just and like you said, during COVID, so the
So
whole world is kind of
that
shaken up.
threw another wrench into
Right.
things because we had thought that we kind of knew how we were going to do it. We were going to camp. We were going to do something called warm showers, which is when people open their homes to cyclists. And we had been doing warm showers in our own homes so that we would have a good rating, so that people would trust us and everything else. And then COVID happened, and there isn't one soul in the world who's going to let you into their home when you've been out traveling. They don't know who you are, and we don't have any way to fix it yet. So everything about what we had planned to do really, really changed because of COVID. And on the other hand, all of my friends were stuck at home wishing they had something to do when we were out in the world having a blast. So, yes, it changed it, but it was also really good that we had that to do during that period of time.
Yeah, I'm just blown away. So many people never do anything like that in their entire lives, anything remotely close to that. Some people have never been on vacation for an entire week and
Right.
out of their
Right.
comfort zone. And to go out there for 3.5 months and to ride 72 days is it's commendable. And my goodness, what an adventure that is and was. Any plans to do something that crazy again?
Well, the following summer, Bruce and I rode the coast of Maine. We went 300 miles, so much shorter. I'll never do anything 3.5 months again. I have so many interests and so many things that I love to do. And when you're riding like that, that's all you get to do. You just get to ride. There's nothing else. You get up, you get everything packed, you ride, you get off, you eat, you plan for what tomorrow is, you go to bed, you get up, you do it again. And though it was wonderful and I'm so glad I did it, I don't need to do that twice. So we did go up the coast of Maine, which was absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, my husband developed brain cancer and he passed away in January. So I'm not able to do any more tandem cycling. There is a really cool ride, though, from the mountains of North Carolina to the coast that he and I had wanted to do. And I may see if I can train on a single bike and do that group ride.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about your husband Bruce's passing. He sounded like an incredible man, and
He
I
is,
would
yeah.
gather if people would like to get to know Bruce a little bit, that they can always visit your blog and to read your books, where I'm sure that
Absolutely.
his name is mentioned completely. You mentioned you're a podcast host. What's the name of your
Yes.
podcast?
Yeah, my podcast is online for authors. I chat with other authors like me who are indie authors, not super well known, but great books, but hard to get out there. And so I read their book. We have a good book chat. So if you're looking for, what to put on your list of next reads, definitely take a look at Online for Authors.
And you mentioned starting another little bite-sized
Yes.
podcast as
So
well.
I'm calling it the book hook, and I'm going to let authors read the first paragraph of their book and then say, based on this, would you add it to your list? So it's going to be a little like 2-minute long. I'm calling it bite-sized. It's just a little thing to put out there. And then I've just started co-hosting one called the Teri and Edith Show. And Edith is also an author, and she and I just talk all things books.
I love it. And I love that you're digging into the community that you're in. That's
Yeah.
how the Scene Project's developed. I'm a songwriter myself. And when I kind of released a song back in 2024, I had been on the local news TV station. I live in South Dakota, so I'm very aware of
Okay.
your Midwest
Yes.
adventures.
Yes.
And so we have access to some cable networks that were gracious enough to have me on. And then I did 2 podcasts, and that was pretty much the entire media tour. And
Right.
I was just like, well, that was, very, very short. How else do we promote these things? And
Right.
one of the gentlemen that I was on with, his name is Dave Holly. Shout out to my good friend Dave, and his podcast, the Dave Holly Hour. And I did his in studio. And being a musician, I had a lot of equipment laying around. And I was like, I have a podcast studio at home, don't I, Dave? And he's like, well, of course you do, And
Right.
here's
Right.
this little unit. He gave me a Zoom P4, which is just a small unit. It has 4 of the microphone plugs into the back, and I could plug my phone into the side. So before I ever got onto doing these on StreamYard and Zoom before this, I just did them on the phone, and I had a whole contact list full of musicians that had
Right.
songs and music to
Right.
put out there. So I love the parallels of our two worlds to say, hey, I would love to start a podcast. What can I do it about? And the answer is so easy, right? Like,
Right.
well,
You
talk
do
to
it
who you
about
know.
things that you know. Right. And
Right.
so when I came up with this book hook idea, I just reached out to all of my author friends and said, hey, I'm thinking about this idea. Is it something you'd be interested in? And immediately I had 142 people reach out to me and say, absolutely. And
Right.
it's like, whoa, wow. Okay. So now I have a year's worth of content. So yeah, it's crazy, but I love being part of a community, and I love the podcasting aspect of it.
Yeah. Did you ever see yourself becoming a promoter of other authors?
No, I never saw myself even being on a podcast. When I was a guest on the first podcast, I was a nervous wreck. I didn't eat all day. I thought I was going to throw up. It was horrible. And then after I did it, I thought, that was kind of fun. I enjoyed that. And I felt the same way the first time I did any public speaking and stood up there and thought, oh, it was not for me. And now it's like, oh my gosh, I get such a charge out of it. So you learn about yourself as you kind of let go and you push past those barriers that you've made for yourself. I think we all sit in that nice little box that's very comfortable. But if you're there, you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not becoming, you're not figuring out who you are. And the bicycle ride pushed me so far outside of my box that I don't know that I've ever put myself back in one since. It's kind of like I'm not sure where my box would be anymore.
No, and anytime that we do that as humans, that we find our limitless potential, right?
Yes. Yeah.
When you stretch outside of that comfort zone, then the question becomes, well, what can't I do? And the answer is almost quite literally, there is nothing that you can't do.
I've told
within
people
the
that if
bounds
you
of a physical nature.
Right. I've told people that if you really want something, then you will find a way to make it happen. Now, if you don't want something, let me tell you, anything will stop you. Gee, the sun came up this morning. I don't think I can do that. I mean, anything can stop you if it's not what you want. But I was too old, too fat, too out of shape to even consider riding across the United States on a tandem bicycle. And yet I wanted it, so I made it happen. And that's what happens is you just find ways. Does it look exactly like you thought it would? No, but it doesn't matter because you went ahead and you found the way that it'll work for you.
So would you say that our limitations are mostly mental then? That it is a mental block that human beings have that keeps them from doing things?
I would say it's mostly mental. Every now and then there'll be situational blocks that just keep you from being able to do things. Like I would have never been able to ride across the United States when my children were little. Because I was a stay-at-home mom. How would you leave for 3.5 months? How would you leave your children? So sometimes it's situational, but overall, I think it's a mental block because if it was something that I had wanted to do when my kids were little, I may have even been able to have found a way then. It might have looked very different. It might have been that grandma came along in a car and we met up in the evenings. You know what I'm saying? It could have been something. So you just have to think, you kind of have to think beyond those bounds that we put around ourselves and say, okay, this thing is stopping me. Can I go over it, around it, under it, through it? How do I get past that barrier?
Truly, if there is a will, there is a way.
Yes, absolutely.
Teri, why don't you tell all of our listeners how they can find more about your podcast and your books and to get in touch with you? And I have a few author friends that I'm going to be sending your way as well.
Super. Yeah. So the easiest thing is to go to my website, which is my name, TeriMBrown.com. And that's Teri with one R. There you'll be able to find my books, my podcast, my social media links. I have a newsletter. Feel free to sign up for. And I even just have a contact me page if you'd just like to reach out and say hello.
Well, fantastic. Teri, I thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And thank you for being part of the scene.
Thank you for having me.